All right, welcome to the Krug Show, everybody. Larry Krueger with you, and we're talking Warrior basketball. Cyrus Satsis in the house. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. Northern California's best barbecue. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they are open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle,
Oh, sign
the
me up.
best barbecue in all of Northern California. Cy, good to see you, man. How are you?
Great to see you. Great to see you, brother. Good, man. Good. We're recording this on a Sunday night. Yeah, doing good, brother.
Let's talk a little Warriors. It was an exciting week for the Warriors, and let's just before we get into the moves individually, the
Yeah.
Warriors have added Chris Paul. They've added Brandon Podjemski from Santa Clara, the combo guard in the draft. They added Trace Jackson Davis in the draft as well. And let's start with the first question, because you look at Jordan Poole moving out, and in addition, Ryan Rollins, Patrick Baldwin Jr., two draft picks, one in the first, protected in the top 20, and one a second round draft choice. And in comes Chris Paul. And I know a lot of people were like, wait, you're trading a healthy 24-year-old player for an injured 38-year-old player. That might be a little too simplistic. I think
Yes.
there's lots of reasons that we'll get into of why that trade was made. But before we get into the whys and how that trade shakes out, just on the surface, is a Chris Paul, Brandon Podjemski combination, do you view that as an upgrade or a downgrade from Jordan Poole?
Upgrade. Big time upgrade. Well, like everything Chris Paul is going to bring to the Warriors next year is what Jordan Poole never brought, or maybe never will be able to bring, which is defense, a higher basketball IQ, better ball handling, a better short range shooting game. Um, Jordan Poole, look, he's taller, but I think that's really the only advantage you get with Jordan Poole. Look, Chris Paul's 38. The injury concerns are very real. Rick Celebrini's going to have his hands full big time. I mean, he had a project on his hands last year with Otto Porter Jr., and he wildly succeeded. He kept OPJ to a 25-minute a cap per game, even in the postseason. And he was healthy and he made a difference in the Warriors winning a title. So he's going to have to work that magic again with Chris Paul. But if Chris Paul's healthy, it's an absolute upgrade, man. For some reason, and Larry, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but Steve Kerr has been thirsting for like a veteran traditional backup point guard for like years. You know, he wanted Goran Dragic like really badly, struck out and missed. He wanted Patty Mills very badly, struck out and missed. He wanted Patrick Beverley just this last season, struck out and missed. He finally got his traditional veteran point guard. The why of that is a mystery, given Chris Paul is so pick and roll heavy in terms of the offensive sets he runs. And that's obviously not what the Warriors run. They're very motion centric. But Steve Kerr has been, again, he's been wanting a player like this for a long time. He finally got it. I'm very curious to see what the plan is. But I do think he's an upgrade from Jordan Poole. There's no doubt about that.
I just think efficiency wise, it's hard to argue that it's not an upgrade. I mean, Jordan Poole turned the ball over. Chris Paul's going to do a better job in that category.
Yes.
Jordan Poole shot 32% from three and 25% from beyond the arc in the playoffs. And you're picking up Podjemski. Podjemski shot 44% from three. So just on an efficiency standpoint, I think it's probably an upgrade. The question I would have is can Chris Paul stay healthy at 38, playing the up and down style that the Warriors play?
Great question. And Podjemski is like you asked the combination of Paul and Podjemski. Realistically, Brandon Podjemski is probably not going to be someone we see much of this year. Mike Dunleavy, even though it's hard to trust what he says, you really have to listen carefully and trust your own instincts and intuition when Dunleavy talks, because Dunleavy Jr. just a week ago said Jordan Poole is going to be with the team for the next 4 years, and like 3 days later he's gone. So, but Dunleavy did say not to expect much from rookies, to tamper expectations. And in all honesty, given the Warriors are in this for a fifth title in 10 years this year, I don't expect Brandon Podjemski to be anyone significant. The second round pick, Trace Jackson Davis, that could be a different story, because that's someone who played 4 years in college. That's someone who his skill set, it's simple. What he does is rebound. He blocks. It's not overly complicated what they need from him. Whereas with Pajemski, you're involving a rookie in a very complicated offense. So I'm excited about Trace Jackson Davis, man. Our mutual buddy Damon Bruce, the way he hyped him up, and he watched him probably closer than anyone else in the Bay Area this past year as a Hoosiers fan. He's pumped. So if he's pumped, I'm stoked too, man. So
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, Damon was saying he had alligator arms. The guy has a 7'2" reach, so it's the opposite. He actually has long arms. But
yeah.
but let's talk about Pajemski for a second, because I think
Okay.
he's really interesting. He's a Greenfield, Wisconsin guy who went to St. John's Northwestern Military Academy for high school, and then went to play for the Illini, sat the bench at Illinois, transferred to Santa Clara, and became the WCC Player of the Year, at least co-Player of the Year. Shared it with Drew Timme. The Warriors said they had him ranked higher. He can shoot, he can pass, he can rebound. He's a playmaker, but he's got some swagger and a ton of fire, and he's a real competitor. And he's a real highly skilled guy. Now he's going to be challenged defensively, but he's a plus team defender. He did lead the WCC in rebounding at eight, almost 9 a game.
Incredible.
And you can't teach rebounding, and rebounding translates. Dunleavy said he likes his Milwaukee roots. There's a lot to like there. And then, I heard an interview that Larry Harris did. And Larry Harris said that the Warriors were trying to decide between two different guys at 19, and they had options to move back to 20, to 22, even further back, but they feared that he'd be taken around 2021 in front of them, and they really loved him. He said he's an elite shooter, spacing the floor is vital in Kerr's offense, but he went on to say that he loves the kid's grit. He loves the kid's basketball IQ, his passing. He says he plays the game with a huge chip on his shoulder. He talked up his floater game in the lane. He did say he needs to improve his defense and mid-range game and agility, kind of lateral agility. But he said this kid's tough, and he led the WCC in rebounding. And he said he's got a compact, strong body, kind of like a Jalen Brunson. And then what I also loved, he said he's the ultimate competitor, and that you don't have to rev this kid up, that he's ready to go, and that Kerr can rely on his shooting on a nightly basis off the bench. He said he's a better shooter than Dante DiVincenzo, and he kind of referenced how they totally they were won over by him in the interview process when they met him in Chicago at the pre-draft camp. So a lot of interesting comments from both Dunleavy and from Larry Harris on Pajemski.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? And give me your thoughts on that draft choice. I mean, there was other guys there. They could have gone with Keegan Murray's brother, Chris Murray. They could have gone with Whitmore, who a lot of people thought was going top 10 out of Villanova. He's definitely an athlete, a dunker, but I don't know about the health of Whitmore. What did you think of the Pajemski selection at 19?
Yeah, I initially was really bummed at the Warriors pass on Cam Whitmore because just like you said, he was projected to go top 10. He's a bigger player, so he would have actually, fulfilled an area of need for the Warriors. That's not necessarily something Pajemski brings to the table this year. But then again, we're also likely not going to see Pajemski much. I'll talk about Pajemski in a second. The Cam Whitmore thing, we don't know what the medical issue was specifically. There was something in his medical report at the draft combine that scared a lot of teams off. That was part one. The other part that I didn't know about until after the draft, which kind of made me understand a little more why he slipped, is he was late on multiple occasions to practices, to workouts, sometimes like egregiously late. Like teams are just sitting there waiting for like 45 minutes an hour for him to show up. And he didn't show up. And when he did show up, it's not like he was remorseful. Like, I'm sorry for being late. He just showed up and just, didn't say or do anything about it. And look, for a rookie to have that kind of attitude, that's going to raise some eyebrows, And so I guess that's a huge reason why Ken Whitmore fell. But the fact that I know the Larry Harris thing, I learned that from you, that the Warriors could have in fact traded down. That is what I ultimately wanted, because you and I have done a lot of shows where we've talked about, and you've really wanted this. I don't blame you. Like, to trade down and get extra picks in a draft that's deep with talent, whereas the next 2 years is going to be really light. And if they could have traded down, that's what I would have personally done. I mean, in a year where you could have gotten extra picks in a deep draft, that would have been my preference. But nonetheless, they got Pajemski. I heard Mike Dunleavy Jr. had Pajemski number 11 on his draft board. That's how highly he ranked him. And so maybe Cam Whitmore or whoever else, maybe like they were so dead set on Pajemski that it didn't matter who ended up falling that low. I'm curious to know who the other team is that also wanted him, or who the other player was. I'm sorry, the Warriors wanted. But
Who would
like
you guess? I would guess Chris Murray.
oh, the other player? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, because Rafael Barlow was on Locked On Warriors with me, and the way he presented his argument for Chris Murray, it made perfect sense. He was like, look, if you're getting just 75% of his twin brother at a rookie deal, a late first round rookie deal, that's a steal. I mean, that's someone who's going to be ready to play his rookie year. That's someone who can shoot the ball for you, who brings size. I'm with you. I wouldn't not have minded Chris Murray, but again, the Warriors are in a win now mode, so rookies are not going to play much of a factor into it this year. Brandon Pajemski, like you said, he's tough. The rebounding thing sticks out to me more than anything else. For a 6'5" guard to average nearly 9 boards a game, that is what you want for a player coming into the NBA, because that does to me personify his motor, his toughness. That seems to be the biggest critique of Jonathan Kuminga is his motor. Even though, like when we watch the games, I don't really see an issue there, but that is nonetheless the negativity directed toward Kuminga sometimes is that he doesn't have that motor that the team really wants, that engine. And if Pajemski has that, great. I've heard the same thing. But there's also the fact that, like you said, he went to a military school. He's supposedly very disciplined. He's not someone that would complain, for example, if he didn't get minutes. He wouldn't complain if his role was very specific. And I think that's a lot of what they were looking for as well, is someone who would buy into whatever the philosophy is, because Jordan Poole and to a lesser extent Jonathan Kuminga, they did not buy in last year. Now, Kuminga, I feel like he can forgive a little more. He's 20 years old. This is someone who in some drafts would have been the number 1 pick. He just so happened to be in a draft that was incredibly deep, so he fell to number 7. If Kuminga's in the same draft in 2020 as Wiseman, he's the number 1 pick in that draft. So Kuminga thinks of himself that highly, which is why it's weird that the Warriors drafted him. It's like if you drafted him, you have to play him. Like that's who he is. But regardless, Pajemski is someone who's going to buy into his role. He's energetic. The shooting, like you said, is very accurate. He's a lights out shooter. So maybe in year 2, year 3, we'll really see what he's made of. But for year 1, I'm not anticipating seeing him much. This is all about like the next moves for the Warriors, and I think you and I are going to get into that because we're both pumped. This is not over for the Warriors. There's going to be some big moves coming.
What I love is how smart the kid is, the confidence. I also loved, when they asked his dad, "Hey, what are the Warriors getting?" And he's like, "This kid's a dog, man. This kid's tough. He'll run through walls." I just loved how all in the dad was on his kid's game, and the kid was just like kind of nodding. And I love the confidence. He's like, "I want to go up against Steph. I wanted to go up against Steph. Now I get to play with Steph. It's unreal."
Yeah.
There's something about like he's got this like swagger that kind of reminds me a little bit of Jason Williams, White Chocolate, who used to play with Sacramento.
Right.
Now that guy was a point guard who was kind of a magic, almost like a poor man's Pete Maravich or something. He with his entertaining passing.
Yeah.
But I like guys who have confidence and a chip on their shoulder and are like hell bent to prove that like they belong. I also like the fact this kid's got some toughness, that he's got some strength in his body, and also he's got a 39-inch vertical. Ooh. So I mean that's big time. I mean we're not anything over 35 is big, but 39-inch vertical means he gets way up. So I love the chip, I love the swagger, I love the smarts, I love the belief. You can see the kid's got belief in himself, and he's really intelligent. I'll tell you the other thing. So at the draft, they announced Brandon Pajemski. Mm-hmm. He stands up. He's got a BP chain. Did you see the BP chain?
I did.
And then he hugs the dad, hugs the mom, hugs some other guy at the table, probably his uncle or something. And he's getting ready to flip around and go up to the stage. And some little kid, like looks like a 5-year-old, comes running down on the other side of the barrier there. And he sees him out of the side of his eye, gives him a fist pound. I mean, so when I have Brandon on the show, I'm going to be like, "Hey man, you already showed you got good court vision there. You saw the 5-year-old and you gave him a fist pound." But I love this kid. I think there's a lot of juice there. Let's
And,
talk.
and let people know real quick, just in case they don't understand what you just said. Brandon Pajemski is coming on your show. Is that correct?
That is correct. At least
Woo!
that's what his agent said. He said he's going to appear on the Krug show this week. So looking forward to chopping it up with Brandon on the Krug show.
Yeah, and I think his dad, by the way, is following me on Twitter. So I is his dad's name John Pajemski?
I don't know, but
I mean,
I'm sure there aren't that many Pajemskis out there, right? That's probably odds are.
My dad.
And that, believe me, hey, I did a couple videos on Brock Purdy, and suddenly his family members were following me on Twitter. So seriously, I talked up Quantrez Knight, and suddenly I look down, Tommy Knight, Quantrez's dad, is following me on Twitter.
But Larry, do you think Brandon's going to have a role his rookie year? Because I don't see him playing significant minutes. Do you?
Well, it obviously it depends on how he plays, but I mean that's easy to say. I would say he's not. He's going to be utilized for shooting. He's going to be a shooter. And I as far as how much he plays, I do think he's going to wind up playing. I don't know how much. I think the Warriors are probably going to bring in some other veterans on minimum deals, depending on what positions they have, what the depth chart looks like. But I think what Larry Harris referenced is they were looking for guys who had a singular skill that Steve Kerr could depend on night after night after night, even as a rookie. And for Brandon, it's clearly his shooting. So.
And Dunleavy did say that's what they're looking for is shooting. So, I'm very curious to know how his defense is. I'm actually bringing on Locked On Warriors tomorrow. I mean, we're recording this on Sunday night, so maybe if you're watching this the day of, Spencer McLaughlin, he does play-by-play for numerous college athletics. He's a former, I believe, play-by-play voice for the Santa Clara Broncos. And he's supposedly has watched Pajemski extensively, and he's going to come on the show later today to break down Pajemski's game. I'm very curious to know just how good or how bad or how much of a work in progress his defense is, because that's important. I mean, if his defense is bad, I mean, regardless of everything else we're talking about, that's a huge liability. I mean, that's a huge reason why we're seeing Jordan Poole, traded to another team, and why the Warriors struggled last year is their defense. I mean, they had issues. So I'm very curious to know how his defense is. That's
well, I think his team defense is considered good. It's his individual defense and his lateral agility. But I mean, I look at it this way: Jordan Poole didn't play any defense and shot 25% from three in the playoffs. This guy shoots 44% from three. Yeah. Even if he plays poor individual defense, you're getting an upgrade off of Poole in that area.
And brother, Rick Barry always says, and I agree with him 100%, that it's all about team defense. That defense starts with the five that are on there and how they work together. So if Brandon Pajemski is good with team defense, that's honestly that's music to my ears. I mean, if he's good there, the rest should come naturally. So that's good news, if which stays true.
And yet nobody comes into the league completely polished. I mean, this guy's only played really 1 year of college hoop. He played 2 years, but if you look at how many minutes he played freshman year with the Illini, he barely played. So he's played 1 full year of college hoop in the WCC. Now you're stepping into the NBA. He needs to work on his lateral agility. But he's a tough kid. And to me, if you know how to play team D, that means you want to win. And I already love the fact that this kid is like, the Warriors had guys who were like, what about my minutes? What about me? What about me? What about me? This guy's like, I want to go 8-0 in the summer league. So, I mean, I like guys who just absolutely burn to win and yearn to win, and it's like, and that sounds like this kid. Let's talk a little bit about their pick at the end of round 2, because Trace Jackson Davis is a guy that I was up on a month and a half before the draft.
Yes, you were.
And I just really like this player, and I would have taken him at 19. I really would have. And I really liked a lot of the things when I started looking into his skill set. Now, he's not a three-point sniper. In fact, he didn't take a single three, I don't believe, his entire time in college. But what he is a very mature player at 23 years old, 23 years of age. He's from Greenwood, Indiana, went to Center Grove High School, then went to Indiana and was the second best player in college basketball this last year. He's also a very mature player. He's a 4-year player. He won the Karl Malone Award as the nation's best power forward. Played 4 years in college. The knock on him in high school was that he didn't play hard, but he's obviously played very hard in the last few years.
Yeah.
Nobody made a bigger improvement from junior year to senior year than what this guy did. Super athletic, undersized 5. To me, his passing was tremendous last year, and he's had back problems in the past, but I guess he's over it.
Okay.
What really excites me about this guy is that he's got huge hands, huge.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
11. Okay, 9.5 inch hands are big. 10-inch hands are huge. This guy's got 11 and 3/4 or 11 and a quarter. He's got monster mitts. He's got
Beautiful.
James Worthy kind of mitts. And when you
Beautiful.
watch him on the low block, the way he commands the basketball with one hand and can fake it with one hand, this guy averaged 4.5 assists per game. I think he's really, really intriguing as a passer. Now, to me, that's what makes him very attractive for Golden State. But he's also a rebounder, averaged over
Mhm.
11 a game. He's a shot blocker, was
Mhm.
5th in the nation in block shots. He averaged over roughly 3 a game. Very productive player, averaged 21 points a game. He's got a 7'2" wingspan, massive hands, averaged 21, 11, and 3 his final year. I see this guy as kind of a replacement for Draymond Green down the
Same.
road,
Same.
who can play the undersized 5. And he also in the workouts was demonstrating more face-up game and a little bit more range on the shot.
Oh.
And there's just a lot to like. He also tweeted out right before the end of the draft when he thought nobody was going to take him, like, you guys are all going to rue the day you passed on
Yep.
me. And then the Warriors,
Yep.
sure enough, make that trade with the Wizards. They get him at 57, a player that I would have taken at 19. But I
Yes.
love the guy who's like, you're gonna rue the day you passed on me.
Yeah, he wrote verbatim. The quote is, "Y'all will regret it. I promise you."
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And when you watch
Same.
him, the passing, the shot blocking, the rebounding, all legit. He's a very quick second jumper. He's the son of an NBA player who played for an eternity, the former
Which is
Warrior
important.
Dale Davis.
Which is important. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got the bloodlines. I think this guy's going to play minutes right away. I really
I think
do.
so
Now,
too.
I don't know what the rest of the front court depth chart's going to look like, but I love this player. I think this is a really, really great pickup. I graded these things out on a video on the YouTube channel. I gave this pick an A. I think this one is an absolute A for all the reasons I've just outlined. Give me your thoughts.
I honestly, this is the most excited I've been about a draft pick in I don't know how many years. I mean, the Warriors. I mean, if you look back to the last 7, 8 years, it's been a lot of misses, man. I mean, they've been screwing up the draft big time. Whether it's Wiseman, Jordan Poole got traded, so that's a blemish. Whether it's Jacob Evans, whether it's Damian Jones,
Jordan Bell,
whether it was just Patrick Baldwin Jr. Who'd you say?
Jordan Bell, Patrick
Jordan
McCall.
Bell's another one. Yeah, first round pick. And the one theme with all these players, which totally delineated from what they've been doing in the early and middle of the 2010s, was drafting players with extensive college experience. Stephen Curry had 3 years. Klay Thompson had 3 years. Draymond Green had 4 years. I can't remember if Looney had 2 or 3, but I feel like he was pretty polished coming out of college. And more recently, they've kind of strayed from that. They've been going with players who have less experience, and Trace goes back to that traditional philosophy of drafting players who not only have experience, but the added bonus of progeny, in this case being Dale Davis' son. You've heard Steph, you've heard Klay talk about the benefit of that, which is not being overwhelmed in big game settings, right? You're completely acclimated to the environment of the NBA. You're ready to go. That learning curve is non-existent, and that's huge. That's really big. I'm ecstatic. I'm personally ecstatic because, like you said, some drafts had him projected going in the middle of the first round, and the fact that he slipped all the way to number 57, I don't know. The CBA thing is weird because I thought you could no longer spend money to buy draft picks, and that's what the Warriors did. So I don't know how what's going on there. They can't use the mid-level exception. They can't spend money on draft picks. Whatever's going on with the rules regarding the CBA, they were able to pull it off. I'm stoked on it, man, because I see what you see. This could be Draymond Green's replacement, and he could be in 3-4 years an elite big in the NBA. I'm ecstatic, dude. I honestly, like, you're right. The only negative is that he's not a 3-point shooter, but who cares? I mean, they don't all have to be 3-point shooters. He gives you defense, he gives you rebounding, he gives you toughness. He's polished already. I'm ecstatic. I feel like he saved the day, the draft day, because until then, Pajemski, like, there's still a lot of mystery about what he's going to be, right? We don't know if he's going to be successful. He might be, but he also might not be. The Chris Paul trade was just a head scratcher. It was, I mean, I don't know anyone who got excited about it. It's intriguing, it's interesting, but we really don't know how that's going to pay off at this point. But Trace Jackson Davis, man, I feel like that's as comfortable as a pick as you're ever going to get. I'm happy. I'm very happy now.
It makes me feel really good about the Warrior front office, even with post Bob Myers, because I really feel like Larry Harris was a huge component, a huge voice in their room, and I have total belief in Larry Harris. And also, Larry made the point. And Larry made the point that this guy played in the Big Ten. I mean, he didn't do. It wasn't 21-11 and 3 blocks against Little Sisters of the Poor. This guy's doing it in the best conference in college hoop last year. You know what I mean? And all. Then the fact that Dale Davis was had a long NBA career, and really could run up and down. And then you see this kid, and it's like the length, the rebounding, the shot blocking, the passing. Just a very productive player. He's got a really nice low post game. But to me, the ability to pass is what makes this really great, because that's what makes Draymond more than just a 6'8" guy with long arms who can block shots. Draymond's a facilitator and a rim protector. And so is this guy. This guy's a facilitator and a rim protector, and I love that.
I mean, you can
that's
make
a
the
great
argument.
combo.
You can make the argument that's why Jokic is an MVP. Is that was the final element of his game that really turned him into this, potential top 25, top 15, top 10 all-time player. He is someone who makes his teammates better, and it's largely from passing. And so if you have a big who can pass like that part of his game I was not that familiar with. You enlightened me on that. Makes me even more excited. Bravo, Warriors. Yeah, I'm stoked.
Really interesting interview with Larry Harris with Monty Poole and Dalton Johnson.
Yeah.
Dalton Johnson on NBC Sports Bay Area that I just watched this afternoon. I guess it was from after the draft. And Larry said that, the Warriors are going to add some veterans in free agency to round out the roster. And, listening to Mike Dunleavy, he made it seem like, the Warriors wanted a big man who could shoot the ball from the perimeter. And I was advocating for Tristan Vukovic, who went to the Wizards in the draft.
Yes, you were.
And then there's also a lot of speculation that maybe, we don't know what they've got cooking trades wise. We'll get to that in a second. But there's also some speculation that they want perimeter shooting big and maybe another veteran wing, and that they're looking for guys in free agency. We know they're not armed with the mid-level, so we're talking about guys who are going to take the minimum. I've got 6 names here, 3 wings and 3 bigs who can shoot.
Okay.
I'm going to throw them to you, and then you tell me what you think.
All right.
The 3 shooting bigs that I think could be viable as guys that they may be able to get on the minimum deals. Mike Muscala shot 39% from 3. Frank Kaminsky, who knows how to play. I mean, he's not quite the shooter that Muscala is, but still a very, very good player. And then Mo Wagner, who I just love how hard Mo Wagner plays and how passionate he is. He also can make an open 3. He's not a huge sniper or anything from 3-point land, but he'll make you guard him beyond the line.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my 3 shooting bigs that I could see. My 3 veteran wings that I could see them have interest in. One would be Justin Holiday, the former Warrior, who, 6'8" guy who can play a little 2, a little 3, play some defense. One Stanley Johnson, who's had some nice run the last couple of years.
I like him, yeah. I like him.
Strong-bodied kid, played at Arizona, played with the Lakers. He's bounced around, but I really like him. He's not much of a shooter, but he's a tremendous defender, rebounder. And then Damian Lee. Steph's brother-in-law.
Correct.
I think Damian Lee is a competitor. He's a try-hard guy. The chemistry obviously would fit nicely. I think they kind
Yeah.
of missed him, to be honest, a little
Yes,
bit this
agreed.
year. So
Agreed.
those are the six, kind of minimum veteran free agents that I could see them rounding out the roster with maybe one guy from those two categories. What do you think of those names? And is there some veteran free agent minimum kind of a contract guy out there that I'm not thinking of? The other one I saw today, RJ Hampton got released. RJ
He did.
Hampton's got athleticism for days and maybe some upside as a defensive wing. Give me a one. What do you think of those names? And is there somebody that I'm missing as far as a veteran minimum free agent that they could get to round out the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I like Muscala. Frank Kaminsky's never really excited me that much. I like Stanley Johnson, but I feel like if the Warriors were legitimately interested in him, they would have signed him last year. Excuse me, because he was available on the buyout market. Was it a buyout or was he just waived? I can't remember, but
I think he
he
might have
was
been
out
waived.
there. Yeah, he was out there for months, and the Warriors never, sniffed his direction. I like Stanley Johnson. I think he would be a solid reserve for the team. Franz Wagner's brother would be another player that I would like. None of these individuals, though, would really put the Warriors over the top. I mean,
No,
but they'd be like the Damian Lee thing. I still have no idea why the Warriors let him and JTA go. Like they could have easily brought those two back. They would have been a vast upgrade over Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb. I have no idea what was going on there where they just let him go. Damian Lee, you're right. He's speaking of motors. I mean, the guy I love that term try hard. But yeah, he's a try hard. Yeah, I would say he's a try hard. And yeah, bring Damian Lee would be a huge player, I think, to bring back for chemistry reasons. Before I get into a few names for veteran minimums, another player who's out there who I do think the Warriors can get. It's not out of the realm of impossibility or out of the realm of possibility. I'm sorry, is Seth Curry, Steph's brother. Just because even though you can't offer him anything more than the veteran minimum, that is where the brotherly connection and more specifically Under Armour can kick in and compensate Seth for whatever dollars that the Warriors can't give him. You could be creative and finagle some extra $1 million that way. So I would love if Seth came. Beyond that, like the names on that currently are out there, and again, I really feel like the buyout market might be someplace where you might see some names sneak through, like a Danilo Gallinari. If the Wizards don't keep him, he would be awesome as a pickup for the Warriors. Someone who's like 6'9", 6'10", can space the floor, shooting threes. But in terms of who's out there, like there's players like I think he like Jay Crowder for some reason. I keep thinking about him. I don't know if he's going to be available for the veteran minimum. He had a relatively down year. The Warriors discussed trading for him with the Suns last year, so the interest is there. And he made, I think, $9 million last year. So if he's available for a veteran minimum, I think Jay Crowder would be awesome. I think Mason Plumlee would be someone who, if he's available for the veteran minimum, is not a 3-point shooter, but he's a defender. He's a rebounder. So there's him, Alex Len, who we just saw in the first round series playing for the Kings.
yeah,
He might be someone. Robin Lopez, like Brooks Lopez would be perfect. Like, I feel like Brook Lopez would be the absolute perfect center for the Warriors to bring in. The problem is Brook Lopez is probably going to command a lot of money. But his brother, Robin Lopez, he's been linked to the Warriors before. He could probably be attained for a relatively cheap dollar amount. So those are just a few more out there. But yeah, I do like the idea of Muscala just because he spaces the floor. Yeah, so there's some names there.
Let's talk about Seth for a second. You
Yeah,
think Seth would come here? I think he made $8 million last year. Seems like he so much wants to kind of chart his own path.
maybe.
They played together. He's now played on his own. He's had a lot of success on his own. I kind of see him more as a undersized, really dramatically undersized 2
Yeah,
than a 1.
that's
But
fair.
do you think Seth would want to play with his brother, or do you think that he wants to play for anybody but play with his brother? I mean, it just seems
I
kind of
don't
he's had opportunities, I'm sure, to like say that he wanted to stay together. It seems like he's wanted to chart his own path. I would love to see him come back. I think he's kind of proven that I think to me, he's established himself as an NBA player, and maybe even an NBA player of some note. I don't know. To
Agreed.
me, I mean, he's never going to be his brother, but
No.
to me, it seems like this might be the right time for the two of them to join up and try to win a title together.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I bring up his name is you're right. Maybe like 2, 3, 4 years ago, that might have been a reach just because Seth was trying to make a name for himself, but he's not that young anymore. Seth Curry right now, I'm trying to, oh, there he is. I'm trying to see what his age is. I think it's like 31 or 32, maybe even 33. It honestly, he's going to be 33 next year when next season starts. So Seth is at a point of his career where he's never won a championship. There's very few teams outside of the Warriors where he would have a better shot at it. I mean, if Denver's looking for him, maybe that's one spot. But I don't know if the Nuggets are going to be able to offer him big dollars. So if he's looking for a championship culture and environment, not to mention like him and his brother do get along. I mean, they played together before, and it's not like they hated the experience. Who knows, man? All I'm thinking of is they are very close, and I could see them having a conversation where his Steph is probably telling Seth, "Look, man, we could win a title. I'll get you the money from Under Armour. It's my company, pretty much. What do you say, man? Like we're both at a point in our careers where we're in the tail end of it. What do you say we come back, we play together, and we try to win a chip? That's in my fantasy. That's what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
so
I love the idea. Seth to me is a proven NBA commodity at this
totally,
point.
totally.
Um,
And one other
let's
player,
yeah.
in terms of a big, and I think he would be available for cheap, and if the Warriors are open to it, I'd love it. And that's Thomas Bryant, who I think he played for the Lakers and Nuggets last season.
Would he come
Um,
here for the minimum?
I
That would
mean,
be a great one. He's a
he
huge
only made the
body.
minimum last year, so I don't know how high the demand would be, but yeah, I would love him on the Warriors if he's available.
Yeah, I saw somebody suggest that as well. I love that idea. Let's talk a little bit about Larry Harris because Larry
Yeah,
Harris did this interview with Monty Poole on NBC Sports Bay Area and Dalton Johnson. And he said a number of interesting things at the end. He's basically said that the Warriors would try to add some veterans in free agency to round out the roster. He talked about how Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis, that one of the things they loved is that they got to visit with both players in Chicago at the pre-draft camp, and that they were very impressive in the interview process. And that was a key part of the personnel evaluation. He also said he thought like both Trace Jackson Davis and Pajemski were strong enough to compete in the NBA, but may have to adjust to the NBA's pace of play and just how fast the whole game is.
yeah.
But then he finished up by saying three really interesting things. He said that the Warriors, he's like, hey, I want the fans to know that the Warriors ownership, now he's touting his boss. So some people would say, this is throwaway comment. But he did say, hey, Joe Lacob is willing to pay a huge payroll. And he emphasized that. And then he added that the Warriors are likely to add payroll after July the 1st.
Ooh,
And so that kind of made my ears perk up.
hell
But what
yeah.
really made them perk up was when he said, there's gonna, he goes, what I really want the fans to know. And, I mean, this was a really interesting comment. He goes, there's gonna be some changes, and change is sometimes scary. And the way he was talking about this team's I mean, they're obviously Steph Curry's going nowhere. It's well documented that Mark Stein had the report today, and we'll get to that in a minute,
Yeah.
about Draymond Green. According to Mark Stein, that Draymond Green's likely to return to the Warriors at some point, that the two sides are working towards an agreement that would bring Draymond back. So, assuming Draymond's back, and
Mhm.
obviously Clay's back, and now you got Larry, and they've already moved Jordan Poole, and they've already moved Ryan Rollins and PBJ, and they're obviously moving. They're not bringing back DiVincenzo, and they're moving on, from Andre Iguodala, and they're keeping Kevon Looney. I think we all know that how much Kerr loves Looney. But when Larry Harris says there's gonna be some, I want the fans to know there's gonna be some changes, and change is sometimes scary. And the way he said it made me think that Klay Thompson is going to get moved. And I guess he could have been referring to Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, but I think Larry's knows that those guys have just been here for such a short amount of time that the fans like them, but they're not in love with them. But the fans are in love with Klay Thompson,
Yeah.
and he's just absolutely like part of the family. He's part of the fabric of the
Yes, he
Bay.
is.
Um, and so when he says there's going to be some changes, and change is sometimes scary, I read that as they're going to move Klay Thompson. And I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think they're going to move Klay Thompson. And I think he was referencing that and trying to almost prepare the fans to say that, hey, you know what? The ownership's willing to take on a huge payroll, and they're going to add payroll after July 1st. And you got Klay making $43 million. And I just feel like that's Joe said earlier this year, outside of Steph, everybody's,
He did.
potentially movable.
Yep.
And, and Draymond's not going anywhere. It doesn't sound like, I mean, he could go to Sacramento or wherever, but I think they're working on bringing Draymond back.
Yeah.
I think he was preparing us without really saying it specifically that and I've got other reasons to believe, by the way, that there are going to be some moves after July 1st. And I think Klay Thompson's going to be on the move. What do you
Could
think?
be. It sounds like it. I mean, because you're right. I mean, the way he was expressing himself, the words that were used, I agree with you, man. It's this Dub Nation and the Bay Area community. I don't know if they're like that attached to Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, he's been here 2 years.
Right.
He hasn't been playing consistent heavy minutes. I don't know if you would need to really preface trading Kuminga or even Moody with warning signs. So I'm with you. The way Larry Harris phrased that, it does sound a lot like if someone's going to move, it's going to be Klay Thompson. Now, look, you and I have talked about this a lot, that this offseason is going to reveal what kind of owner Joe Lacob truly is. Because if you're a sentimental, I'm sorry, you're not going to trade Klay. I mean, he's a foundational piece. He's synonymous with this dynasty almost as much as Stephen Curry is. They're going to build a statue of him someday outside of Chase Center, but he's at a point in his career where if you keep him at this point, it is for sentimental reasons. Like, he is not a player who's worth 43 million. And based on the way he performed this last season, especially in the postseason, and the way the season went along, if you're counting on him to be a key part of your team, you're not going to win a championship. That is the harsh reality of this Warriors roster. Is Klay is no longer that guy. Like Frank Red on your show, when we've had these discussions, talks about how Klay isn't going to get less than 30 million or shouldn't get less than 30 million. I think that's like double what he should be getting. Like, Klay Thompson to me is a 15 million a year player at most. He's such a liability now defensively. He can't create his own shot. His 2-point shooting is abysmal if you look at his numbers from close range last year. So he's a borderline liability. He's incredibly inflexible. Like, he's a really prideful individual. Like Steve Kerr, I used to kind of be disappointed in Kerr when he'd publicly scoff at any suggestion of Klay coming off the bench. I mean, he did that with you in an interview. But now I'm realizing he does that because he doesn't want to upset Klay. Because Klay hearing from his coach, just the idea of coming off the bench would probably put him in a bad place mentally. And that's how like fragile Klay is when it comes to, his pride and his role as a starter on this team. And so I'm with you, man. I love him. Like, it's not a fun subject to discuss, trading Klay Thompson. But if you still want to be a world championship contender, if your goal is still to get a 5th championship in 10 years, and especially a 5th ring for Steph, because when we're talking legacies, that's probably the most important thing. I don't think you're going to win that the way this salary cap is set up with the CBA. The only way they're upgrading this roster at this point is with veteran minimum contracts. And we just talked about the names that you can get. They're not blowing anyone out of the water. or you make trades. And Jonathan Kuminga makes $6 million next year. Moses Moody, I don't actually don't know what he makes. I have it in front of me. But whatever it is, like Moody, Moses, I don't darn it. I thought I had it in front of me. I don't. But whatever it is, Moody makes what, like 5 million, 3 million. I forgot what it is. You're not going to
He makes 3.9 next year.
Okay, 3.9. So collectively, you're talking about 10 million that you could trade between Kuminga and Moody. And so you can get someone back who makes 12, 13 million at the most. And I don't know anyone out there who makes that amount of money who can be a game changer. Now, when you throw Klay Thompson's contract in there, which is $43 million, and you're looking at the names that you can get back for that kind of money, now you're talking. Now you're talking about individuals that could be legitimate game changers who can legitimately make the Warriors a real contender who can challenge Denver, because Denver's at the top right now, man. They're the ones that you got to look up to. And we've talked about bigs in the past. We've talked about Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guys that match up: Karl Anthony Towns, Pascal Siakam in Toronto, and then in Clipperland, Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. I mean, of those four guys, Leonard, Kawhi, Siakam, and Cat, who do you want? If it was Kuminga and Klay,
I mean,
some package deal.
I would take Kawhi if I mean, here, okay, if Kawhi can be healthy, I guess that's the thing. If we're getting
There's no E on the end, no E, just Kawhi. Seriously, he's not a Kawhi. He's a Kawhi.
Or Kawhi, Kawhi Leonard.
Just Kawhi Leonard.
But I'm saying, like, if I don't know if we're going to get him as a healthy Kawhi. So you don't add the E at the end. It's just Kawhi.
No, just Kawhi Leonard.
Okay. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is one of the greatest players in the history of this game. If you can get a healthy version of him, of course that's who I'm going with. But I don't know, man. That's a tough one.
I think Siakam. I'm a Siakam head. I like Siakam.
I like him a lot. I would not complain at all. And the thing is, I used to think that Karl Anthony Towns would have been a fantastic option. I still do. But like 2 weeks ago, Draymond Green on his podcast ridiculed Karl Anthony Towns, or wasn't on his podcast, it was Twitter. I'm sorry. So Karl Anthony Towns was on Patrick Beverley's podcast. And on the podcast, Kat said that, quote, "When my time's up and I retire, there's going to be people who are going to say that I changed the game." Draymond Green went on Twitter, and this was June 14th. So this is like 11 days ago. And Draymond Green said, quote, Pat Bev, when people come on your show, they change the game. And with a bunch of like emojis, like kind of in shock. I'm looking forward to it, man. So he's mocking Karl Anthony Towns publicly. And I don't think that's the first time he's really ridiculed Karl Anthony Towns. And that kind of tells me that I don't think Cat's coming here. That I could be wrong. I mean, do you think he's coming after something like that? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, he's definitely a big man who can shoot the ball. It's funny that Green would rip him because in some ways he's the perfect guy to play with Green.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So
because Green's going to do all the dirty work, and Cat can camp on the perimeter and be the special, big man with range offensively that he is. So, but Siakam would be intriguing to me, and if you threw in Kuminga, that would be interesting. One other rumor, or two other rumors that I saw. Tell me what you think of these two names. There's one online right now that talks about Kuminga and Moody in a deal for Jared Allen. I'm not sure if I don't think that works. I think you'd have to throw in somebody else.
You know, the Cavaliers? The Cavaliers
with the Cavaliers. Yeah. And the other one I saw was Kuminga and Moody to the Hawks for Onyeka Okongwu.
Yeah. Honestly, man, like the trade, you and I were talking before we started recording about hypothetical trades. The one that would excite me the most, and in fact, I'll get the trade machine going right now to see if it actually will work, is getting the Raptors involved. Like, the Raptors are about to go into a rebuild, which is why Pascal Siakam is available. I love Pascal Siakam on a side note. Like, he is a legitimate big. He can fit with the Warriors. He's a great shooter. He's a great defender.
37.8 on the cap for next year. So it would have to be Siakam and something for Klay of around $5 million. Or it would have to be, if it was Klay and Kuminga, it would have to be Siakam and something bigger. Maybe Thaddeus Young, maybe Boucher. If you,
Well,
I
well,
know
well,
the
the
Warrior
what?
fans want OG Anunoby in the worst way, but that's 27 for Siakam and 18-8 or 18-6 for OG.
Right,
Probably
but
not going to
but
work.
but what I'm wondering is if you make the trade where you're trading Clay, you're trading Moses Moody, and you're trading Jonathan Kuminga,
That's
can you get back
53.
Pascal Siakam and also get back OG Anunoby? And that's what
I
I'm
think
gonna
you could. I think that would work.
and I'm putting in the machine right now. Let's see if this works here. So I'm gonna hit
Would
the
you make
try
that trade?
trade
Would you try?
button.
I would. I think I'd do that trade.
Success. You could do it. It would work. So I that's the trade I would go for. Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. You'd probably have to throw in probably 2 first round picks. Maybe make them like top 4 protected, something like that. But you could get back Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. And if that's the trade, sign me up. Now, if you can't get
What do you think if they made
yeah,
that trade with what they've already done without knowing how they'd round out the roster? Are they going to run with Denver?
easily. I would call them the favorites. If they made that trade, because look at their starting lineup right now. Like if you made that trade, your starting five is is Steph, Wiggins, Ananobi, Draymond Green, Pascal Siakam. That's your five. Now you have Looney and Chris Paul on your bench. Now you have
Podziemski,
Trace. What's
Trace
up?
Jackson,
Trace
Podziemski.
yeah, Pajemski, and then that's also where you're going to be starting to like recruit free agents for veteran minimum deals, and you're suddenly looking at very different type players, right? Now you're looking at like wings, you're looking at guards. Point is, yeah, if they make that trade, 100% of the favorites. I think they would. I think they'll wipe the floor on the Nuggets. In all honesty, I really do. I feel great about the Warriors if they did that. What do you think? I mean, I
I do. I mean, I think, in a lot of ways, I mean, first of all, it'd be very popular, right? It'd be, even though people love Clay, getting back Siakam and Anunoby would
huge.
be, very, very popular.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I definitely got the sense from listening to Larry Harris that he was prepping us for Clay Thompson's moving in July, kind of a message.
And just to
I
add to that, like I'm really lucky to have a couple of insiders who are phenomenal sources of information. Sometimes they just tell me what they're hearing. Sometimes they tell me like legitimate pieces of information. This is not information that's like I recommend aggregating. I'm not reporting anything saying this, but I've been hearing from multiple sources in that building that there will be a big trade. Like all indications are there's going to be a big move. That Larry Harris attribution does not surprise me. The question is who is going to be involved. Look, that would be earth shattering if Clay moved. I mean, it would be. So but if you're getting Siakam and Anunoby back, that would certainly quell whatever anger or disappointment might be going on in Dub Nation land. That would be a phenomenal trade, man. Yeah, the Warriors are favorites to win the title if they make that trade. I would easily say that. Yeah.
Let's finish with this tweet from Mark Stein. I've read this today, and I tweeted out. I said, "Great news! The Warriors believe they're going to re-sign Draymond Green." Mark Stein reported that the two sides may be inching closer to an agreement. Here's the quote from Stein. He says, "I continue to hear nothing but strong confidence emanating from the Bay Area that an agreement on a multi-year deal for Green to stay right where he's always been is forthcoming. A 3-year deal, league sources say, is a popular current projection for the 33-year-old, according to Stein.
Okay.
So I think you may, my guess, there was also Draymond liking somebody's tweet that said that he was going to get 100 million.
Yeah.
How I don't know if he's going to get 100 million, but I could see him getting 30, maybe 3 years 3 years for 90,
I can see that too.
or
Yeah.
maybe, I'm not sure if he'll be happy with the 3 years for 75, but the 3 years for 90, 30 million a year. He's not getting 100, but he's getting a lot. I mean, that's not much of a. It's not like he's giving them some kind of bargain. I guess there might be a team out there that might go 4, so maybe it would be a little bit of a concession. Maybe Sacramento will be willing to go 4 after they've, moved off of Rashawn Holmes, and maybe that looming out there would make the Warriors go from 25 to 30 in AAV for Green. I could live with 3 years at 90 million for Green. I could.
I mean, ultimately, the bottom line with how much money they give Draymond is it makes no difference in terms of the salary cap. It's all about Lacob and that ownership group and how much money they're spending next year. Yeah, Draymond Green added a couple of emojis like the prayer symbols and finger cross to an Instagram story that a basketball player on Michigan State posted, where they wrote something like Draymond Green is easily worth over $100 million, and then Draymond added his emojis expressing support to that notion. Yeah, I'm with you. 3 years, $90 million. I mean, I in all honesty, if we're on a personal opinion note, I think that's still a lot of money.
Oh, it is.
That's a lot of money, but it's better than losing him. You can't lose him if you want to win titles. Like, that's the bottom line. If Draymond Green is gone, so too is the championship window. So you have to bring him back. I think it's really it's really tacky of Brian Windhorst to be going around publicly saying that the Kings have the cap space. He's trying to feed like this rumor or feed the idea to the public of the Kings maybe going in and getting Draymond Green just to drive up the asking price, given he is a clutch stooge. But I'm with you, man. Draymond Green is not going anywhere. He will stay with the Warriors. Who knows how much the final amount will be, but yeah, I mean, just the Larry Harris thing, coupling Draymond Green with a real center sounds incredible. I just hope it happens, man. And I honestly wouldn't mind it if it was the other way around, where it was like you make a deal with the Clippers and it's either Kawhi Leonard or it's Paul George. I wouldn't mind that either. I mean, because then your center is just gonna have to be, a secondary type player. Like a Muscala type, but you're also getting an incredible talent, regardless of which one of those two you're getting. Because Paul George, it's a 6'8" athletic freak who can shoot the three, who can play defense, who can attack the paint, who could probably play a stretch four on the Warriors. And then if it's Kawhi Leonard, I mean, that's one of the greatest players ever, and if he's healthy, that's an unbelievable piece you're adding to your starting five. I mean, adding Kawhi would be, you'd move Wiggins to the 2 essentially, and then you'd have a starting five of Steph, Wiggins, Kawhi Leonard, Draymond Green, and probably Kevon Looney. That sounds amazing too. I would not complain about that. So
no question if they're healthy. Hey, couple quick ones before we call it quits here.
Yeah.
Do you believe, because I do, that Draymond Green leveraged the Jordan Poole trade?
Yes.
You do.
I would go even beyond believe. I would say that's pretty much true.
You think he said to them, "It's him or me"?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't know. I don't know if it would go that far, but
well, that's kind of what we're talking about. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was like an ultimatum type of thing, but my understanding is the team, and I don't know if Draymond was involved in all these discussions, but they did come to a realization that those two cannot play together anymore.
But
how that went down, I don't know.
How it went down. I mean, he could have whispered to Kerr after the podcast.
Yeah.
By the way, go send Joe a message here. Yeah. Here's the other question I have for you.
Okay.
Do you think if the Warriors had chosen Poole and said, Draymond, there's the door, would Steph be unhappy with that? Would Steph have? I mean, I don't think Steph was going to force him. Steph's here. But how do you think? What's Steph's reaction if Draymond says it's him or me, and they say,
and they chose Poole,
and they chose Poole?
You would have a Wagner Group level mutiny led by Stephen Curry. If that happened. You would have a Russian level mutiny on your hands. I think that played a huge part in this. Stephen Curry would go apeshit. He absolutely would.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff.
Would you agree with that? I mean, you think so too?
I don't know. I don't know the personalities well enough, but my sense of it is, if I just look at the importance of Draymond and what he means to Steph Curry on the floor, forget off the floor, just on the floor, I would say that Steph would be unhappy at the very least. And last I checked, you don't want an unhappy centerpiece on any franchise, in any sport, in any year. Yeah. So if Steph Curry was going to be in any way unhappy, that alone would influence me to say, you know what? Yeah, Green's older and he doesn't have a huge shelf life, and Poole's younger, but we're moving off of Poole. And I also looked at it as this too. Draymond Green's way harder to replace than Jordan Poole. Way
Absolutely.
harder to replace.
Absolutely.
And why even chance it that Steph could be upset? The only other question I would have for you is, do you think if the Warriors got real strong about we're going with Poole, do you think Kerr would have been unhappy? Do you think Kerr would have said, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm not sticking around for this last year? What do you think?
Maybe.
It's a guess. It's a guess because we don't know how he's thinking.
My guess is he would like Steve Kerr. Like from my understanding, is Steve Kerr talks like he's not going anywhere for a very long time.
He told me. I
Uh,
asked him. I said, "Are you going to be here long term? You know, what's your year? You got 1 year left." He said, "Hey, man, I love coaching basketball. I love this place.
yeah,
I want to be coaching this team for a number of years." I mean, that
yeah,
he told me
exactly.
that on the radio in what, March?
There
I
you
mean,
go.
you know what I mean? So
There you go. Yeah,
I got to take him
that's
at his word.
and that's the swagger. That's what I'm hearing as well. He's not going anywhere. So, my guess is he would probably not be happy about it, but he probably just suck it up and play him. It is crazy. But then on that note, like, do you really think? Because I don't know if Steph would want Klay Thompson to get traded either. Like, so I'm curious to know how that conversation goes. If Klay's indeed on the market, like, are they having a conversation with Steph going, look, we know you two love each other, but do you want a ring? Like, do you want a fifth ring? I mean, because this is the only way we're going to do this. Or do you think Steph says, no, don't trade him? He's my splash brother. I don't want him to ever leave. Like, how does that go? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm curious about that.
I think you probably get one. You know, Steph's
Yeah,
an incredible player, but I gotta have Draymond. All right, you got Draymond, but guess what? We gotta make this trade. All right,
absolutely.
I think if
I,
you're Steph, you just at the end of the day, you look Clay in the eye and you wish him well, and you say, "Bro, I got a lot of pull, but I just work here." I mean,
absolutely.
that's kind of it.
And look,
So
I
I
feel like,
tell. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, I feel like like most people who work in this industry, you get to the position we're at, probably as children, we're just complete sports nerds, right? Like I don't know about you, I read the sports page every day. I memorized pretty much every analytic possible growing up. Back when the box score section of the sports page bore relevancy. But I got spoiled growing up with the 49ers because I literally had a chance to study the blueprint of how a dynasty should be run, right? I bring this up on your show a lot, and I'm sorry for doing that, but like Eddie DeBartolo laid down the blueprint for how to create and then maintain a dynasty. He did it for 18 years. And it could have been longer if he wasn't a goddamn riverboat gambler and then his sister completely sabotaged him after that. But I digress. The point is, Eddie D showed that in order to maintain a dynasty, you got to move on from your stars the moment they're showing signs of decline. He did it with Joe Montana, which was crazy, but he did traded him to the Kansas City Chiefs.
I don't even think it was Eddie. It was more Walsh.
But
It was
Walsh
more
wasn't there at
Walsh.
that point, though. Walsh was gone. It was 3 years out by that point. I
Well,
mean,
but I'm just saying it was Walsh's kind of thought process. I think
to bring Young
I will
in,
say this:
yeah,
Eddie understood that the reality of the situation on a lot of
right,
these things, but Eddie also, I think, he also walked the walk and talk. He didn't just talk the talk, because not only has he supported many of his ex players out of his own
exactly,
pocket, after their playing careers were over. It
correct,
was his comment at the Hall of Fame ceremony that led to the creation of the Golden Heart Fund, which is the first of its kind, independent foundation that it was designed to take care of players who played for the 49ers who have fallen on hard times post
Oh, there you go.
career. And so he can say to everybody, I loved my players
Yes,
and I love my players, and I continue to show my love for my players, and I will continue to love my players till they're no longer on this planet. And I show that love by my generosity and my ability to help them at every turn. So I think Eddie Eddie's a very special person, man. Very,
He
very
is
special person.
sorely missed as owner of the 49ers. But my point is that he and the organization as a whole, they did not hesitate to move on when it was necessary, while simultaneously not burning bridges. Like you said, all these players, whether it was Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig, all these star players that they moved on from, who still wanted to keep playing, they're still adored by the organization and vice versa. And
There's been
so,
some, there was some cooling off period. Like, if the
yeah, yes,
Warriors move Clay, he's going to hate them for a few years. And like
yes, probably
when the Niners moved off of Joe, he probably hated him. And when they moved
a
off of
little bit.
Dwight, he probably hated him. But eventually they come around if
Absolutely.
you show, generosity and love and respect, but I mean,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, business prevails. Business
Totally.
always prevails.
And so in the case with Klay Thompson, that's just I think that's just a hard decision to make, but it's the necessary decision if you want this thing to keep going in a dynastic manner. So let's see. I'm curious to see what happens, man. But the Chris Paul trade was part one. Very curious to see what the big domino is that's going to fall next. And yeah, I'm excited, man. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I'm too.
exciting.
Hey, tell people what you got cooking on on the Locked On Extravaganza throughout the week. You'll be talking Warrior basketball every day. What do you got planned?
Yeah, the Monday show is going to be a mix. I've Dr. Pendia coming on. He's in the Bay Area. You've probably seen him on various radio stations, TV stations. I'm as a sports doctor. I'm bringing him on because he's going to talk about Chris Paul's injury history and how concerned we should be about that. Like are the injuries he suffered leading to now gonna affect him? Gonna make a difference this season? So he's going to come on for a segment. And then the second segment is going to be Spencer McLaughlin, who is a host with the Locked On Podcast Network, but he also does play-by-play for various sports. He used to cover the Santa Clara Broncos, watched Brandon Pajemski very closely throughout last season, and he's going to come on and give us a breakdown of Pajemski and his overall game. I'm very curious to hear about his defense and whether or not he is a complete like five-tool package or if he has holes in his game. So that's going to be Monday's show. But then throughout the week, our old colleague, Brian Murphy, is going to come on. I haven't had him on in a long time. Damon Bruce is going to come on. And then Kylan Mills will join me for two shows. And there's someone else I'm bringing on as well, but I forgot. But yeah, that's the lineup. And follow the program on Twitter at Locked On Dub. Subscribe to Locked On Warriors. And yeah, we'll see what happens, man. This should be. I don't know if we're going to hear. I don't know if the move's going to come down this week. I don't know when all this stuff is going to happen, but it's probably going to be soon, right? I imagine
after July 1.
After
July 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're going to start to see moves being made.
Yeah.
So
but
go ahead.
I was going to say, you're probably going to start hearing rumors, though, because typically the agents start talking to the teams like much sooner, and these deals are finalized well before the contracts are signed. Yeah, I'm very curious, man. These are just kind of like anxious times while we just sit back and wait to see what the team does. So,
it's a great time of year in the Bay for sports. And you got the Giants heating up, playing good ball, coming off a great homestand. You got Niner camp around the corner. You got the Warriors trying to formulate, their plan of attack to get Steph one more ring and rebuild the roster. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah, and you have a lot of dipshits out there who somehow think that I'm brain farting on the quarterback's name. Who's the guy they drafted with the number 3 pick that right now is the
Trey
source
Lance.
of Trey Lance? Thank you. You have dipshits out there who think Trey Lance should be the next starter, even though he's shown nothing to indicate that. Whereas Brock Purdy, with his perfect record last year, is for some reason not good enough. I do not understand that logic at all. I'm not. I do not.
Hey, let me thank our sponsors, Marin Autoglass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. In the corner of the screens, you see that we're brought to you by New York Style Italian Sausage, the best sausage in the country. And, of course, the title sponsor of the Cruise Show, Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. Best barbecue in Northern California. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin. Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville, Pig in a Pickle. The best barbecue in Northern California. Cy, good to see you, bro.
Great to see you, brother. Love you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.